Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me today is Utsav Chakrabarti as we look at the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine and how did it suddenly become Modi's war. Let's welcome Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsav, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you?
Namaste Sree, happy to be back.
Utsav, Peter Navarro is a PhD from Harvard. Surely somebody would think a little bit before putting out words like it's a Modi's war. And then he's saying that much of the oil that is coming from Russia is being refined and being sold back to Europe and other countries, and that even India is not getting it. Only a few oligarchs are getting it. I mean, he's kind of getting all over the place. He's saying that India has become Russia's laundromat. He's trying to see if there's any way he can say, okay, look, this is Modi's war. I'm a reasonable man. I can understand some arguments, even if they're a little outlandish. What are your thoughts? Why is Navarro doing all this? Is he trying to curry favor with Trump?
I think so. I think Navarro and so the Navarro side of the Trump administration, which is the more economic, fiscal, financial side, seems to be the one driving the agenda here, and not the State Department and the national security side. Which is why you see people like Navarro coming again and again and giving statements almost pointing towards India in public posturing. So it's by design. I don't think it's happening by accident. I think it is an intention from the administration to push India harder. And I think the reason they are pushing India harder is because there are two things that they are admitting. Number one, they have lost leverage over Russia. Number two, they are unwilling to use any leverage they have over China. So both Russia and China are less willing to address our administration. And therefore, India is the next biggest entity that they can put pressure on. And they are putting pressure on. So that's I think how they are looking at it. And I don't know, it's not working. In fact, the statement you just mentioned, Navarro made, and that this war is Modi's war. In my observation, that has brought a lot of negative repercussion within Washington, D.C. Today, my organization, Hindu Action, just retweeted American Jewish Committee statement, which has come out. AJC, which is one of the largest Jewish advocacy groups in America, came out with a statement criticizing Navarro for this association of Modi and India with the Ukraine conflict, even though AJC has been on record supporting Ukraine on many occasions. And that's not the only one. I see many think tank leaderships coming out with statements. I see Hudson coming out with statements. Even conservative ones like Heritage and their thought leaders are coming out with statements. So this is very, very interesting. And I think there is a lot of unhappy minds in Washington, D.C. about I think Navarro might have crossed a few red lines, if I were to put it in the Washington, D.C. terms.
Utsav, tell me this. By saying all these things, Modi hasn't budged one bit. He has already said that, look, I'm going to see where else I can export the products I was exporting to United States. For example, Russia says that they'll pick up some clothing. Maybe Russia will do a deal with India and pay for it in rupees, which makes both of them happy because Navarro, what is his name? The guy, Lavrov was complaining, what am I going to do with 10 billion rupees, right? Well, here is what you do. You can buy these clothes. You are the sizes that will fit what was originally intended for United States. I mean, if India grinds it out and makes this, survive 6 months, for example, that would be a bigger problem after that for the United States, don't you think?
I agree with you. And I can see Russians eating way more basmati rice than they have ever eaten. But yeah, I think there is clearly an indication that both Russia, India, and China, which is the surprise factor here, are creating somewhat of a framework to go through with this. And I think Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan is also a very interesting, marker in this situation, because it seems like Japan is also warming up to India in many ways. And that's something that we in Washington, D.C. should be very watchful of, because we don't want all our allies in Asia to not like us anymore, and that would be a disaster in our foreign policy.
Very true. But Utsav, India never gets disliked by anybody. I mean, you can fault India for not doing anything on many matters, but going and seeking somebody's wrath is not India's style. I mean, you take a look at what happened in Malaysia when Mahathir Mohamad was the prime minister. Guy kept baiting Modi, kept baiting Modi, kept baiting Modi. Modi did not say a word until Malaysia suddenly realized that all the palm oil that they were exporting to India was just gone up. And then what happened? Mohamad is out of a job. So point I'm trying to make is India will act, and it acts in a decisive manner. I don't know what the equivalent in the United States is, but I wanted our viewers to also understand what the status of the war in Ukraine is. Why is now Putin not even willing to talk or sit down and talk with Ukraine? What do you think is going on?
So I think when Putin came to meet President Trump, and there was some sort of ice breaking in Alaska between the two countries, there were some agreements that were broadly put forward, and United States, I believe, kind of accepted some of those, not formally but informally. And those agreements included that Russia would fully get Donbass. It will take Donbass, if not by negotiation, then by physical means. And Russia will be willing to freeze the front, and in a hard negotiated case, even empty out the northern Ukraine, which is the Kiev region, the 𝗠𝗎𝗏 region, which is north of Kiev, and the region around Kharkiv. So those areas were kind of agreed upon as some of the things that both sides are willing to do. Thank you for sharing this map. So if you zoom in, you see the dots on the northern side. So to the north, and you see the 𝗠𝗎𝗏 region. Those are the dots, which were basically the areas that I last explained 2 weeks ago that Russia has conquered as a response to the counteroffensive it had launched against Ukraine in Kursk. So first Kursk was taken over by Ukraine, or at least a big part of it. Then Russia launched a successful counteroffensive, almost took them a year. And they took over this entire red dot area from Ukraine in the 𝗠𝗎𝗏 region. Similarly, if you see the Kharkiv region, which is slightly to the bottom right of it, right south of Belgorod, Russia has taken over. You can see some red dots in the border areas. You see Belgorod to the right of 𝗠𝗎𝗏, under Kursk.
Can you zoom in, please?
There it is. Yeah, you go.
Right. Got it.
You see some red dots there. So Russia was willing, broadly, in a very informal way, Russia was willing to leave those areas and just demand, if you go south further, if you drag it south to the below the yellow area, just the Donetsk region. So Russia was only interested in the Donetsk region, and it seems like Ukraine did not agree to that, and even Europeans did not agree to that in the post-Trump Putin meeting. So I think Trump had worked very hard. I have to give credit to President Trump for that, to try to get Putin and Zelensky to meet. And Putin had formally agreed to that. He had agreed in a phone call during the meeting, with the Europeans being there. And then I think both Europeans and Zelensky disagreed on the terms of the meeting, which is basically that Ukraine will agree to leave Donetsk region. And I think once that happened, Russia said, okay, fine, then we are not meeting. We will just achieve those objectives on the ground, and the war will continue. And I wanted to highlight something that happened in the 2 weeks or 10 days, when I came last, right after the Trump-Putin meeting. You see if you move to the left of this area, and go down a little, so pan down, so you can see a little bit. So you can see the Pavlohgrad region, where the hand is, where your hand is. And if you zoom into that area, I'll point out to two major cities in that area that are currently surrounded by the Russians. And this happened right after and during the time go to the right slightly, to the pan to the right. Yeah, keep panning, keep panning, keep panning. Yes, pan down a little bit. No, up, the other direction. Yeah. Further down. Yeah. So you see that there is this Pokrovsk region, which is surrounded on three sides by the Russians, which is the lower, the Ukrainian salient.
Got it.
So that city has been surrounded by the Russians. They surrounded it right before the Trump-Putin meeting. And they were pretty much, the Ukrainians tried a counteroffensive to unblock the city, but they failed in that. They initially succeeded until the Trump-Putin meeting happened. They lost a lot of lives. And now they are back under siege. And they are almost operationally encircled. One more road gets cut off by the Russians on the southwest, and then the entire city gets surrounded. Similarly, if you pan slightly up towards the right, so that was Pokrovsk that I was talking about. You see the city of Konstantinivka, which is right here.
Right there. Yeah. So this is salami tactics, man. This is salami tactics. Yeah.
So Konstantinivka is also surrounded right now. So Russians are putting pressure on both these cities. And if you see, if Konstantinivka falls, you see Kramatorsk, which is to the north of it, right to the north of it. The road to Kramatorsk opens up. And if you remember my previous conversation 10 days ago, that is the goal. Both Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, which is to the north of it, which are twin cities, they're like Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So these two cities then open up. And the road to these two cities come under Russian, operational tactical surveillance and attacks, especially drone attacks. So that is the goal that Putin has in mind. So things are not looking good for Ukraine on the ground. And I personally believe that if every side is really interested to save lives, which I believe is from my point of view, I believe lives need to be saved. Every week, thousands of people are dying. Then I think there needs to be an agreement where Slavyansk and Kramatorsk are given, or some negotiation. I shouldn't use the word given. I care how much Ukrainians care about it, but it's just not feasible. I think they are going to eventually lose those cities, and it will happen after thousands of lives are lost from both sides. So I think that's the update in the last 10 days, which is not in favor of Ukraine, but against Ukraine. And if you go further north and, pan down, so yeah, keep going north. Yeah, that's it. So you see there is another city called Kupiansk, which is to the bottom right, where the red and the yellow meet.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, right, so zoom into Kupiansk a little bit. So that city is also surrounded right now. So you see the red is the Russian conquest. So they have literally covered. There is only one or two roads to the south of Kupiansk that are left for Ukrainians to come and go. And they are also under drone, because drones nowadays have like 20-30 mile range. So they are also under drone attack. So this city is also going to fall eventually in the next month or so. So I think Russia is looking towards achieving the military objectives stated in the Trump-Putin meeting through military means, if there is no negotiations happening. And so I just think it's a tragedy that thousands of lives are going to be lost in this process. Both sides.
So these three cities that are encircled, what is the population demographic of those three cities? Russian speaking or Ukraine speaking, or?
They are mostly Russian speaking. Russia, as I mentioned in my previous conversation with you, both Kupiansk, actually Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, and Kupiansk are historically connected to Russia, culturally connected to Russia. Russians have an emotional attachment with them. Kupiansk had actually fallen to the Russians in the initial phases of 2022. Then in the October successful counteroffensive that Ukrainians had launched in 2022, they had taken back Kupiansk, just like they had taken back northern Kherson and those areas. So, but Russia is really focused on getting Kupiansk back, and it's willing to sacrifice lives for it.
Hey, tell me something. Right at the very beginning, you had a 64-kilometer convoy of Russian trucks parked just outside Kiev, and then they withdrew. Why did they withdraw?
So there are a lot of theories on it. I will give you both sides version of it. the American version, or when I say American, it's the Biden administration's version. So this is not what current administration was saying. The Biden administration's version of it was that the Russians chickened out. They realized, they took the main military airport around Kiev, which was the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 airport. It was a very famous battle in which Russian special forces flew in and took over. And there was that famous video from CNN where CNN was standing right in front of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 airport next to Kiev and covering the confrontation. And there's a guy, a Russian special forces guy, who sets up his gun right in front of the CNN camera. And the CNN guy asks him, which Ukrainian unit do you belong to? And he waves back saying, I'm Russian, I'm from Moscow. And then the CNN folks got really scared and left the area. But my point is that the Western version of it, the NATO version of it, is that Russia withdrew because it was unable to surround Kiev from all sides. And that's when the 𝗤𝗏, an infamous 𝗤𝗏 massacre happened, which each side has its own story on. The Russian version of it is that they went all the way there. There were negotiations happening with the Ukrainian leadership in Turkey, in Istanbul. And Ukraine had agreed to give up Donetsk in that negotiations. And that's in return, Russia agreed to withdraw its military columns from Kiev all the way back to Belarus, which is where they came from, because Kiev is right next to Belarus.
Correct.
And then British Prime Minister Johnson, Boris Johnson, flew into Kiev, and there is this famous video where he puts his hand on Zelensky's shoulder. And this is again the Russian version. There is no verification of it from our side. So then Boris Johnson said, "You need to keep fighting. We are with you. We are going to kick the Russian butts." And then I think Ukraine withdrew from the negotiations, and so Russia feels that it got betrayed, because Russia withdrew its forces from Kiev, and then Ukraine did not keep its word under quote unquote Boris Johnson's influence. But again, these are narratives from both sides. Truth lies somewhere most likely in between. It's hard in this information war which side is telling the full truth, or maybe both sides are not telling the full truth.
So what is left for Zelensky? I mean, he is losing territory. He has lost validity. Legality of his office is in question. And he continues to say, I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight. Whose fight is he fighting? Definitely not Modi's.
So Zelensky is losing credibility in the West as well as within his own population. So his own population is increasingly becoming upset with him, weary of the war. I mean, we have to understand that every family has lost somebody in Ukraine at this point of time, and people are getting upset. It's a tragedy right now, and there is some rumors I am listening to coming out of London, which says that the British are trying to replace Zelensky with Zaluzhny, who was the previous military commander of Ukrainian army until last year when their offensive failed. So Zaluzhny was forced to give up his position to the next in command, who is 𝗟𝗏𝗏, who is now the commander of Ukrainian army. And Zaluzhny was made the ambassador to Britain by Ukraine. So he's currently the ambassador of Ukraine to Britain. And they may be trying to prepare him to replace Zelensky, because Zaluzhny is known to be a nationalist. Obviously, Russians will say he's a Nazi, but Zaluzhny is a very powerful figure in the Ukrainian public discourse. And because he was a military general, he has more authority than even Zelensky.
So even, let's say he comes to power, would you agree to the terms? Because right now, the way I see it is, there is a logic, there's a method to the madness of Putin. He wants a land bridge to Crimea, and he has got that. And if you keep fighting, he will get back Donbass region, but he might also go to Transnistria, which means he's going to cut off Odessa.
Correct. So that if you pull the map up again, I want to show you an interesting event that happened just a couple of days ago. So if you zoom into Odessa,
right where,
if you zoom
near Odessa,
if you zoom into Odessa, this happened just 2 days ago. There is a river. You see a river to the left of Odessa, to the southwest of Odessa. Further down. If you keep down, that actually is the border between Romania and Ukraine. So right around that area there was a Ukrainian ship. It's the largest ship in the Ukrainian Navy that is still surviving. That was parked in the face of the river, in between Romania and Ukraine, and it's a surveillance ship. So it was obviously being used to surveil the Black Sea, where the Ukrainians had very successfully sunk a bunch of Russian ships. There was a remote-controlled Russian boat.
I saw that video.
Yeah, laden with explosive that came into that river and blew up that surveillance ship. So your question that, if this keeps on going, then Russia might even start imagining ways to connect to Transnistria and take up Odessa and take control of the Black Sea again. That seems to be a possibility that Russia might be exploring if it continues down that path, because you can see this red area is all Russian control. So the entire mouth of Odessa is under Russian control.
Well, Utsav, look at Europe, right? Germany has just now said, we're not putting any more dimes into Ukraine. We're going to go into conscription basis. We're going to drive out all the illegals. I mean, things that are nice to sound, nice to hear. Whether Benz or men's, I think, is able to do it or not is a different matter. But this is what AFD stood for. And yet he is not in coalition with them. He wants to ban AFD. A little bit on German perspective.
I think the Germans were more hawkish during the Trump-Putin meeting. The Germans were probably one of the key, along with the British. The Germans and the British were probably two of the countries that were pushing Zelensky not to capitulate to Putin's demands after the Trump-Putin meeting. But in the last 2 days, yesterday especially, there was a barrage of missiles and drones. In fact, it was the second largest drone and missile attack in Ukraine. There were 580 something missiles and drones launched from Russia. And they destroyed the headquarters of the British presence in Kiev. They destroyed the headquarters of EU. And they destroyed a newly manufacturing plant built by Turkey, the famous Bayraktar drone. It took them 2 years to build this manufacturing facility of drones in Ukraine. The Russians waited for 2 years for them to invest all their money, build all the production lines, and 1 month before production began, they completely destroyed it with missiles. So I think what I am seeing out of this is that there is a sense of dominance in the Russian modus operandi. And after these events, I think Germany has taken a step back. And I think Menz has kind of agreed. He's kind of indicating that, look, we are going to help you guys out, but I don't think we are going to send that many soldiers in, because it seems like Russia has the ability to hit them wherever they want. Now that might change. See, we have to always understand that Russia itself is also under a lot of stress. So, I don't want to sound like Russia is having a dance in the park here. Russia itself is under a lot of stress. The Russian army is also under a lot of stress. But to me, it looks like the urgency is more on the Ukrainian side than on the Russian side.
Thank you so much. And now we have a few questions for you, Utsav. If you don't mind, just 5 or 6 questions, and then we can run through them quickly.
Sure.
Varga wants to know, if Modi is reason for Ukraine war, then who is responsible for Iraq, Iran, Gaza, Libya, African wars, Vietnam, Afghanistan, etc.? What is UN doing all these decades? Instead of blaming Ukraine war on Modi, why USA cannot dismantle NATO and announce it boldly and tell Ukraine it has nothing to do with war and keep silent?
Well, the answer is very simple. See, there is, to say that it is Modi's war is obviously a far-fetched notion, and everybody is criticizing, and a lot of American think tanks are criticizing Navarro for it. So obviously I do not agree that this is Modi's war. But there is certainly a role that India has played in keeping the Russian economy alive. And just like America is looking out for its own interest, India is also looking out for its own interest. So in that manner, India has, from in the Indian perspective, I believe India was doing what's best for India's interest. Now, to answer the question whether why the US cannot dismantle NATO and announce it boldly and tell Ukraine it has nothing to do with this war, why would the US do that? The US is the dominant force in the world. It has dominated Europe through NATO for the last 75 years, 80 years almost. That would be against the United States' interest, no matter who is in power. So I think the Trump administration is not saying that we dislike NATO or we want to dismantle NATO. What the Trump administration is saying is that we want NATO to take more responsibility from the European end and spend more money, because America cannot afford to put more money into NATO. And one of the things that President Trump has been doing in the Ukraine conflict is that he's trying to delink the support to Ukraine from being an economic aid to being a business proposition. So he's asking the Germans and the French and the British and the Poles and whoever else is interested to pay America, buy weapons from America, and then supply it to the Ukrainians, which also benefits American economy. So see, you have to realize that this is about nations looking after their own interests. There are no friends, and obviously there are many enemies that everybody has, but it's not based on friendship and goodwill as we have seen over the last few years.
Next question from Tamil Sendil Kumar. I strongly believe that Rahul Gandhi is the prime reason for providing or provoking Modi and Trump, which resulted in tariff war. What are your thoughts, sir?
I do not think Rahul Gandhi is a prime reason. I won't put it that way. Rahul Gandhi could be somebody who is obviously, as a leader of the opposition, trying to make the most out of anything that impacts India and impacts Modi. So if tomorrow morning Modi gets up and gets a knee injury, Rahul Gandhi will say something that will highlight the fact that Modi has a knee injury and therefore cannot walk straight. Rahul Gandhi is doing what a typical leader of the opposition does. My perspective on this is that Rahul Gandhi could have been more constructive in his criticism, if he has any, of Modi, and he could have been more thoughtful in his solutions that he provided. If I were Rahul Gandhi, I would be much more thoughtful in the solutions I provide. I have seen so far Rahul Gandhi coming across as somebody who starts making black and white statements so that he ends up looking like he's supporting a foreign nation or a foreign entity more than he's supporting India, which backfires on him most of the time. And this is something that has happened this time as well.
Next one, please. Maithili wants to know, are there any other countries who can supply such cheap generic medicines to the West? To US, I guess.
Not at this time. I think it takes some time to build up infrastructure. And so far, India seems to have had a good amount of time to build up those infrastructures, to build up the skill sets, and to build up the quality needed to meet the requirements of the West. So it takes some time. Can other countries do it? Possible. Will it happen right away? No, it will take years.
Milburn wants to know, thousands of Ukrainian children who are abducted need to be returned to their families. Is this true? And is Belarus the hinge between NATO and Russia? I'm ignorant about these.
Okay, to answer the first part of your question, it depends on who you are listening to. Again, if you were to listen to the Western narrative on the quote-unquote abducted children, the Western narrative is that the Russians are picking up children who are Russian-speaking and Russian language, culturally Russian, ethnically Russians, from Eastern Europe, Eastern Ukraine, and taking them into mainland Russia to move because they want to make them Russian. They follow the Russian Orthodox Church. They don't want to convert to Catholic Christianity or some other denomination of Christianity that Ukraine is currently promoting. So that's the Western version. Western version is like you are kidnapping Ukrainian children and taking them into Russia. The Russian version of it is that these are Russian-speaking children. They have been living in the front lines since 2014. They have been facing bullets and bombs. Some of them have lost parents. Many of them have lost dads who in this war. They are Russian, and Ukraine is discriminating against these people, which is one of the reasons why the war started in Donbass to begin with. And therefore, we are taking them behind the front lines to give them a safer life in safe, protected areas of Russia that are not the front lines. So both sides have their own narrative. You need to understand that the truth probably lies somewhere in between. And now, in terms of Belarus, Belarus as a hinge between NATO and Russia, I don't think so. I think Belarus is pro-Russian, at least currently under its current leadership. It's very pro-Russian. It is more of a, it pretends to be a neutral zone where everybody can meet, because Western countries are very hesitant to go to Moscow or to Russia to have a meeting. They feel that it legitimizes Putin, which is also one of the reasons why Putin came to 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗥𝗚, Alaska. And the first thing he wanted, and he said it publicly, is that we should all meet in Moscow, because Putin wants that legitimacy that the West has not given him all these years, at least since the war has started. So Belarus is that middle ground where both kind of meet and wink at each other.
Next one, please. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for your super sticker. Next one. Krishna Kishore wants to know, is Ukraine war all about Russian oil, but not Ukraine only? Venezuela is also now on. It seems to be all about oil. Well, India is only importing 13% of the energy that Russia produced since 2022. 13.
Yeah, this is the part that we have to understand. A lot of this is rhetoric, and more rhetoric. It is not about oil. What it is about who gets to control Europe. And it is also based on a real historical fear that both sides have. So this fear goes back all the way to Napoleon's time, and even before that. It is the fear that Europeans have and Russians have, where they want to have a buffer region between them so that they don't go to wars with each other. The buffer region keeps shifting over the last couple of 100 years. Sometimes the buffer region is closer to Germany. Sometimes the buffer region is closer to Moscow or to Russia. Ukraine, Hungary, Romania, Poland, and Belarus usually are the countries that shift which side of the battle they are going to be on. And Ukraine historically has been on the Russian side, but after the Cold War ended, NATO and Europeans thought this is our opportunity to once and for all move the buffer zone as close to Moscow as possible. Hasn't worked, and Russia has pushed back. So this is what is happening. This is a European geopolitical conflict. Oil is one of the components because it is important for making money. So each side is focused on it because it helps Russia keep its economy alive.
Next one, please. Manov-san wants to know, Reuters reports Trump discussed purchasing energy from Russia's Sakhalin during Alaska talks. So Trump wants to end India purchasing Russian energy to help him better bargain for Russian energy? No. India also has a stake in Sakhalin. That's 1/3. There are 3 different places in Sakhalin that each country has. Japan, one part, India, and then Exxon, I guess, had the other one. Over to you.
So I think what Trump was, if this conversation is accurate, then what Trump would be looking forward to was buying Russian energy after Russia has been enticed to get into a negotiated settlement and use that as a carrot. The complaint that the administration has, the Washington administration has currently with India, is that India has been buying Russian oil in the last 2 years, and it has been using that oil to refine and supply to Europe, and then not just making money itself, but giving enough money to Russia to keep its economy thriving and keep the war well fed. Because Russia has.
I thought India was paying for it in rupees, Utsav.
So that is something that is interesting, because what I am hearing right now in Washington, D.C. is that India was using a big chunk of dollars that it was earning from US to give to Russia. So it could have been a hybrid. It could have been a rupee and dollar trade. So it could have been anything. I'm not fully aware of the exact breakdown of how much of it was in rupees and how much of it was in dollars.
Actually, it's getting more exotic, and India is moving away from the dollar. I'll tell you why. The next capping of price by the Europe is now $47 per barrel. As long as you bought it below 47, you're okay. This is their way of trying to reinforce what happened in 1986 when they tried to bankrupt the USSR. So India has negotiated a deal with Russia, allegedly, that gives them $5 off of that, $42 a barrel. The only difference here is that India will pay for its oil from Russia in dirhams of UAE.
I see.
So again, you see, India is saying no more dollar. So there is a definite message there. I am not going to use dollar anymore to buy my energy from Russia. I have a feeling this is the biggest sticking point for US, because if India can stand up to this, imagine what the other countries are going to do. Over to you.
I agree with you. I think, and it's not helping that when people like Peter Navarro go around chiding India all the time, and I saw a funny recording yesterday of our press secretary giving a press briefing where they compared the crime rate to Chicago, and brought up Islamabad and Delhi and compared it to the crime rates. So it was literally like, let's figure out a way to bring up Pakistan and India somehow in every conversation.
Yeah. Hyphenate them.
Hyphenate them. So I think it is also not helping, because it looks to me that India has made a call on this, and India has kind of figured out that, okay, there is a cost to pay, and there is a very severe cost to pay, but we are going to pay that cost. And I think there has to be ways to make this roll back. I am sure that there are people in DC and people in Delhi, and people from Delhi in DC, and people from DC in Delhi who are talking to each other to figure out how this can be fixed. I just hope it happens fast, and it happens in a very positive way, so that both sides can be happy.
Thank you so much, Utsav. There are wheels within wheels here. This is not an easy picture to unravel. And that's why we keep, meeting every so often. And I'm hoping that Utsav will be back in a couple of weeks' time, because it is also fast moving. Like he said about the attack on the British consulate and the EU consulate in Kiev, as well as the blowing up of that ship on the river. So things are moving very fast. Let's wait and see how it plays out. 2 weeks from now, we'll be having Utsav back. Thank you so much, Utsav. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you very much.